So, we're here with David Chalmers, the Lib Dem candidate for the South West in the European elections. So, David, what are your policies as an MEP, and what do you want to achieve for the South West if you're elected?
Well, one of the things that I think we need to be doing is really standing up for the South West and making sure that there is a strong liberal voice in the European Parliament. I mean, there are many issues for us down here. I mean, we tend to be almost the forgotten part of the UK. So for our infrastructure, for our jobs, for opportunities for young people, our farming, fisheries, all of those issues are really important to me. And so that is what the Lib Dems would do, is actually make sure that we have a strong voice for the South West in the European Parliament. But one of the things that I'm very keen on is doing things like expanding the Erasmus programme, so that is something which is available for all students. I've seen myself as a governor of a college in North Devon, North Cornwall, Petrock College, just how a few weeks away in a different country, either in a college or a school setting, or actually doing some vocational training, can really transform their lives. Often it's the first time that they've actually been away. It's contact with other young people, and it really gives them sort of a different perspective on life. And I feel that that is something that needs to be expanded to make the EU more accessible, more so that people can really feel themselves the tangible benefits of us being a member. At the moment, it's too much that Brussels is too far away. So those are some of the things that I feel that we should be doing.
Well, on the subject of student programmes, among other things, young people have been known to make up a significant part of the Liberal Democrat vote. What is it that your party offers young people that other parties don't?
Hope, opportunities. I mean, we are the party of Remain. We've been so continuously right since the referendum. We've argued that remaining in the EU is the right thing for us, and I think that the thought of cutting off those opportunities to be able to live, work, play, and settle, if you want to, over in other countries is huge. Not that people want to do it for all their lives. I mean, I've spent a good part of my career overseas. I've come back and I see that the people should have that opportunity to be able to do so. Cutting that off is not good. And as I said, expanding the Erasmus programme, and I would say the reason why many of them support us is because they see that we are a party that offers them, a real sort of direction for the future. And we support the votes for 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. We have argued consistently that they should have been given a vote in the referendum. This is a say about the future of their country, and they should do so again. And we will continue to do that. People say, "Oh well, what?" One of the things with the future is that I'm very concerned about how too many people don't understand how democracy really works for them. I go out knocking on doors and I hear from people who say, "I'm not going to vote. What's it going to do for me?" And that is often a case with people into their 30s. And one of the reasons is because they've never actually got into the habit of voting, and they don't understand how the benefit of voting, how that can change their lives. When they get into their 40s, 50s and 60s, they do, and they regularly vote. And so one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that there is that rebalance in politics in this country, so that the youth vote, young people have an equal say in the future of this country. And leaving the EU is symbolic of that. We have on our list Luke, who's a young student at Bristol University, and he comes from Gibraltar. And we've put him on the list. He's the youngest MEP candidate of, I think, of any of the parties here in the Southwest, to actually make sure that that message is put across, because we really feel that it's absolutely essential that parties also look towards how they can help them.
I'd like to talk a bit about the local elections last week.
Yeah.
Obviously, quite a big win for the Lib Dems. Most people agree, and I imagine you're very happy about that.
Yeah.
But do you worry at all that the increase we saw in the Lib Dem vote is really just a protest vote, which won't translate well onto the European level when the single issue Change UK are running?
No, you see, it really wasn't a protest vote, because I know how over the last 4 years what we've been doing is going out working to rebuild our base and our support amongst the voters. There is always an element of protest in what people do when there's a reaction to how badly our country is being governed at the moment by the Conservatives who are in power. But there was a definite message there in the local elections towards both parties, that the people of this country are not happy with the way either of them have been managing Brexit. And the fact that both of them are parties that support Brexit and are trying to force Brexit on this country, it was a real strong message back from the people of this country saying, we don't want any more of this. And we saw also how the one party that really had its candidates up there in this election, UKIP, was literally trounced. Most of their candidates were completely wiped out everywhere they stood. So a protest vote, I mean, there is all an element of that. I think that the Greens are a very good party that stand for some very good issues. I have nothing but respect for many of their members, but there was definitely a bit of an element of protest in some of the way that their vote came through. But I think that they did well, and I would congratulate them. But let's not forget that the one party that has consistently stood for Remain, almost nobody could actually not think that the Lib Dems are a Remain party, did the best of any of the parties during the local elections. And I think that sends a very clear message to Labour and to the Conservatives that they need to really rethink their policy on Brexit.
Well, since Brexit is likely to be the most significant issue in these elections, are you at all worried that the Lib Dems and Change UK will split the Remain vote, leading to an imbalance towards Brexit?
The local elections have really made a clear message, I think, now to the electorate that actually the party that can deliver on Brexit are the Lib Dems. Change, I just, when I look at them, I just wonder what they really stand for, apart from Brexit. I mean, they have no sort of consistent policies together. And now, their choice of their number one candidate here in the Southwest actually tells me a lot about Change, and that is Rachel Johnson. Now, they could have had the option of choosing someone like Julie Girling, who has been an MEP for 10 years, who's had experience, who's done, she was a Conservative MEP until they withdrew the whip from her. Very consistent, excellent MEP. I don't always agree because she's in Conservatives, but I've stood on platforms with her and worked with her. They chose not to choose her. They chose Rachel Johnson, who has no experience of really nothing, more of just sort of a show pony. And we know that when she joined us 2 years ago, we didn't give her a parliamentary seat. I mean, she came along and thought, hello, I'm Rachel Johnson, I'm a celebrity, I want to get into Parliament. For the Lib Dems, there is a process that you have to go through to become an MEP, an approval process to become an MEP. You can't just walk into it. Even if you're whoever you are, you have to go through this process. And so that to me told me an awful lot about Change's real sort of commitment and experience towards the Southwest. So my message to voters is, if you want to actually stop Brexit, the best vote that you can make on the 23rd of May is a vote for the Lib Dems.
Well, you seem to be saying that because Change are just a single issue party, they have no other viable policies, in your opinion, that they possibly won't perform well at the European elections. But we have historically seen single issue parties like UKIP perform very well in these elections. And what are your thoughts on the recent polling data showing the Brexit Party, which is a single issue Leave party, consistently ahead of all the major parties?
I think that is a real worry for the Conservatives. We know that the electorate vote is split, so that there is a strong amount of the electorate that want to leave, as there is a strong amount of the electorate that wants to remain. What we have shown through the local elections is that the Lib Dems are the party that will best deliver a way of stopping Brexit. I mean, that really is, is the sort of the consistent message that we've been putting out there. But opinion polls, they change. I mean, at the moment, we are the number one party in London of all the parties. The polls are showing that. I mean, I know though but they do. But I think that I was out over the weekend talking to Remain voters, because those are the people that we are talking to convince them to understand, look, we are the one party that will deliver. So we were talking to Conservative voters, Labour voters, and it was quite remarkable how virtually all of them responded with, of course, I might normally vote that way, but we understand that the best way of actually stopping Brexit and the best party to put an MEP, a Remain MEP into the European Parliament is by voting the Lib Dems. And so that is, I think that that message has obviously already got through and is getting through, and that is the message that we will be delivering over the next 2.5 weeks.
Just touching on the subject of opinion polls.
Yeah.
Last week the BBC projected that if there were a general election tomorrow, neither party would win a majority. They'd both end up on around 28%.
Yeah.
Would the Lib Dems be open to a coalition with another party, and if so, which?
I was going to say that's much higher than my pay grade. I think that we would, the membership would be consulted on any future sort of coalition. To be honest, I don't think that after what happened to us back in 2010 and 2015, that we would go into any form of coalition with either the Conservatives or Labour. Certainly not as they stand at the moment. I mean, both of them are pro-Brexit parties. They would both have to change their leadership, and they would have to change their policies for us to even contemplate working with them. So I mean, I think it's sort of that is just so far removed. But and also the likelihood of a general election, I think, is almost certainly in the next few months is not going to happen. What the local elections will have told both Labour and the Conservatives is exactly that. They are unlikely to gain a majority at the moment, and so that nothing will really change. And Mrs May saw 2 years ago when she called an election, thought she was going to win this huge majority, and she lost her majority. Had she had that majority still, we wouldn't be where we are now. She would have been able to have forced through some form of Brexit through Parliament, I'm pretty certain. So the fact that she went back to the people and asked them, come on, support me in what I want to do, and the British people said, actually, no, we don't, is where we are today. So I think it's something in the future, and we should never rule out working with parties. But I think that it's just a no. It wouldn't happen at the moment because we are so far removed from either of them.
Well, your current leader has said largely the same.
Yeah.
But if it were to happen and you didn't enter a coalition, are you at all worried that it could then lead to a more polarised form of coalition, like a Labour SNP coalition or a right-wing Tory Brexit Party DUP amalgamation?
Well, I don't think that they would have the majority to be able to do that. Which is, I mean, part of the problem we've got in this country is that our system of government has basically broken down. First past the post was, deemed that one party would gain a majority and be able to push through. It can't at the moment, and it's completely stuck. Our system is stuck. One of the reasons is because parties are trying to force through Brexit on us when MPs have realised that it will be bad for the country as a whole, economically, culturally, our future. And it is, no matter what you say about politicians and MPs, to actually vote for something knowing that it's going to make your country worse off than it is at the moment is something which is obviously stopping them from doing so. Going back to that idea of we want to make sure, as we did in the coalition, when we were in the coalition with the Conservatives, that we were able to temper many of their policies and actually make sure that their policies were more geared towards some of our own liberal values. Obviously, there are areas that we didn't, and that we made big mistakes during the coalition. I think that there were certain, everyone talks about red lines, and we should have had some of our own red lines, and at some point have said, actually that goes beyond what we would do. And you know, I wasn't a member of the Lib Dems actually at the time. I joined the Lib Dems just after or actually just around the 2015 coalition, around that general election. I would have been very strongly arguing against, you know, there was doing some of the things that we did. But at the same time, I think that our record in government is something to be proud of. I mean, if you look at the moment, we're talking about climate change, and what we brought to the coalition when Ed Davey was the Environment Minister. I mean, people recognise that was, you know, a very, you know, strong, good time for issues within the environment. And that is another reason why I think that being a member, the UK being a member of the EU is so important. That is such a big issue at the moment. And the best way for us to work together is and to fight climate change is with our other European partners.
Well, I think you touched, or rather hinted at it very briefly in that last answer.
Yeah.
But many people know that one of the biggest crises for the Lib Dems was in that coalition, a breaking of trust with the voters over tuition fees. Do you think that attempting to overturn the result of the 2016 referendum could further damage this trust, especially in a region like the Southwest, which voted to leave?
No, I think that people are really respecting us for standing by what we regard as the right thing to do. So
Sorry, you're saying then that the 2016 voters made the wrong decision?
No, I'm not saying they made the wrong decision, but there was a lot of misinformation that was put out during that referendum, and I was very much involved in it. I ran the Stronger In campaign across northern Devon, and I, at the time, I mean, the whole sort of thing about the money's going to come back and it's going to go into the NHS, we knew that wouldn't happen because there'd be less investment in the country in the first place. There was a lot of things that were said, and people have real reasons why they voted to leave. You know, we touched on it right at the very beginning, you know, lack of jobs, lack of infrastructure, lack of opportunities. You know, I had a woman who came up to me in the referendum and she said, you know, David, how much worse can it get for us here? My family's living on a food bank at the moment. I mean, you know, I'm going to leave just to try and bloody change something. And to those people, I totally understand and I sympathise with them. But leaving the EU is not the answer. We've got to find answers to those questions. And so I think that there has become quite a strong, I mean, people respect us for standing by what we have said and what we've consistently said. We were the first party, right after the referendum to say, look, we need a people's vote to actually agree on what sort of form of Brexit it would be and where we were going. So straight afterwards, that's been our message, and that is something that the electorate actually does respect. At the moment, what they see is too many politicians saying one thing, then almost knowing what they're saying, they don't really believe in it. And how people could really be saying that leaving the EU is going to be wonderful for this country, it's going to open opportunities, it's going to... Look at Liam Fox. We'll have trade deals with every other country, and all these things. None of it has come true. You know, the money into the NHS, none of it's come true. There are some people, and the Brexiteers, who still consistently say that, even though the reality is that it won't happen. And I think that the real fear for a lot of people is this whole no-deal Brexit, that somehow by us sort of breaking away and sailing off into the high seas on our own is going to be this wonderful moment for our country. We have seen just how difficult that can be and the sort of impact it will have on not having access to markets in the same way as we do for our farmers, our produce. Ireland, Northern Ireland, the whole issue around that, it's such a complicated matter of this issue of membership of the European Union and whether we should be in or to leave. And to come up with these simple answers, I think that is what has really undermined people's faith in politicians. And so seeing the Lib Dems having consistently argued that that we should remain in the EU has actually resonated, and it's why people are now coming round as they did last Thursday, and voting for us and trusting us in government.
Well, you made really the Lib Dem case there that you want to remain in the EU.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lib Dems have often said that we should stay in and reform it from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
People in the party have for a long time said that it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any specific reforms that you'd like to see, especially going into the European Parliament as an MEP? And how would these be achieved?
Well, I've always been very concerned over the years just at how the number of people voting in European elections, it reflected that, and it's not just in the UK, it's in other countries, a sort of a disconnect with the EU. And so that's why I think there needs to be a much sort of policies that make it more accessible, and that people can really see the benefits to them in the EU. And we touched on it with Erasmus, an expansion of that for everyone. I mean, everybody knows that there needs to be some sort of reform of the common agricultural policy and for the fisheries policy. I think that both of those are ones where so much of the budget of the EU is going into those areas. It needs to be how we are looking to help areas develop and grow. And certainly us here in the southwest in Cornwall have been one of the real beneficiaries of the EU and that sort of development investment. And so that's an area that I think that really needs to be expanded. That's the sort of role that the EU should be playing. It's a difficult one on how we change the actual sort of makeup of the EU, because it is this sort of balance between having a democratic element with the European Parliament, but also you don't want to make it too strong, or certainly national governments don't want to do that, because they also want to make sure that they have their say in it. So you have, the Council of Ministers, and then you have the Commission, which is there sort of working, putting together laws. So it's a sort of a hybrid of all these elements. The European Parliament is the democratic element, and one of the things that I've learned over the last few years is that people really don't understand that you can vote for your MEP in this, and the work that an MEP can do, and how that can actually benefit your area. So one of the problems I think that we've had down here in the southwest is that we voted 3 UKIP MEPs, and I'd like to know what on earth they've done for us in this region in the last 5 years. If you elect MEPs like from my party, and I'd say include that some of the MEPs who have been there in the past, we've really done great things. Graham Watson, when he was an MEP for the South West, he brought in the European search warrant. That has been a huge success. That helped one of the 777 bombers actually be brought back to the UK. I mean, these are really sort of tangible things that Europe can do. So there needs to be, I think, a greater communication with people as well to help them understand exactly what the European Parliament, the EU, is doing for them, and how they may be able to influence that and make those changes. And I think we've seen again this week, climate change and the whole sort of green issue is a real concern for people. Well, we have to work with other countries on this. We can't sort of do this on our own. So being a member of the EU, that's where we can sort of influence and be there, and making sure that emission standards are how we want them to be. Sitting outside isn't going to work. So again, these are reforms. These aren't actually sort of, I suppose, internal reforms, but they are reforms and policies which are so important to people. Those are sort of the areas that I feel that we should look at.
Well, you speak of the European Parliament and about how it's the democratic wing of the EU, and obviously that's quite true. It is the democratic body of the EU. But are you at all worried that in entering a political union in that way, the democratic power and the say of the British people over the regulations that affect this country is declined?
No, I wouldn't say that, because one of the options that they're sort of putting forward is for us to go into some sort of customs union where we would be like Norway. Now that really concerns me, because then we are having to take, most of the rules from the EU, but we don't have somebody at the table. The UK has actually, as a member of the EU, has had huge influence over the laws. This is what, when I'm talking to my partners over in other countries throughout the EU, because we have, our sister parties of the Lib Dems, and talk to them quite a lot. They always say, you did, at the moment you have this huge influence. Don't you understand that your people have been coming in here and making sure that, so for instance on financial institutions, because of the importance of London and the finance centre there, that we have made sure that many of those laws have actually, and rules coming into the EU, have actually not harmed finance and have actually been able to help it develop. That being outside, we wouldn't be able to do that. I agree that there's this balance that has to be held with the European Parliament and then the national parliaments. And this is one of these sort of systems that if you were actually writing it right from start, maybe you wouldn't do it this way, but it's how we are. And countries, when they come in, are giving up a certain amount of their sovereignty to be able to, as you always do, that you can't just go off and do everything on your own when you're actually in a group of other countries. But that's the same as if you're in NATO or if you're in part of the United Nations, and if you enter into trade deals. It's a sort of a partnership because there's a benefit that you get from both sides. What's been sort of sold to the British public, or has been sold to them, is an idea of somehow that they've lost out because they've gone into some sort of partnership and working with other countries. I completely contradict that. I think that the future is working together, supporting one another. I mean, just on the idea of people say that the European Union is the greatest sort of peace project in our lifetime, and it certainly is. It isn't. It's only 70 years ago that we had war amongst all the countries in Europe. What the European Union has enabled us to do is, instead of fighting with one another, that we've actually sit down and have our disputes. We disagree, but we usually find something which is actually very beneficial for all of us at the end. So that's that sort of balance that is brought into it. Is it perfect? No, because nothing is. But you would have to be very careful at making changes to this sort of balance of power, and national governments. One of the big issues I think that's come up is the majority voting. And it always used to be that it was unanimity between the countries, and on certain issues that there is a majority vote. That had to be done because with a union of 28 countries, you couldn't necessarily get everybody agreeing, and you could have one country, a small country, holding everything up because of a certain sort of national interest. So that was a change that was made in the interests of all the countries. But as I said, to make other big changes would have to have a lot of thought about that. But I think one of the things that we have to look at is actually how we reform our own political system, because the UK system is broken at the moment. It needs. We don't have the checks and balances that we should have. Our constitution, although regarded as unwritten, was always felt to be flexible and was always felt that it would protect us. It has shown in the past year that it's worth tissue paper. It has done nothing, and the rules and regulations and conventions are just being torn up overnight to suit the government in power. So we have to actually look at really how we reform democracy and our own political system in this country, and then I think that will help us to understand our place in the European Union.
David Chalmers, thank you very much.
Thank you.